Boom. The desk setup is evolving a little bit more. I got these glass monitor stands. I got an LED strip that changes colors and back. Oh, ooh, that's pretty cool, red and blue. I got LED bulbs, second change color as well. Wiring hiding is a success. Ignore the Xbox 360 controller and the laptop charger. Everything else is hidden. All the monitor cables, all that. Yeah, it's still pretty ugly. You can't see it from right here, and that's all that matters. As one of you guys put it on Instagram, I'm racing out my office, but I really like it. I think it looks really cool having a bunch of LED lights. I need a big 4K TV up there, and then I need nicer monitors, and then of course I need a computer that can actually run normal games on not super low settings. But that is not what this video is about. Don't worry, not an apartment video, this is our car video. Today we are gonna be talking about how I almost blew up the Rally Miata. No clickbait or anything. I was really stupid, and if I didn't get lucky, I would have had to either rebuild the motor or get a new motor for the Rally Miata. Before we talk about that, I do want to go ahead and talk about this video's sponsor though. Now, this video's sponsor fixes one of the biggest problems I personally have with being a car enthusiast, and that is finding car meets. I find it very difficult to find car events, car shows around my area. Octane is an app that fixes that. Octane is essentially a map that shows you where car events are in your area. You open up the app, you find your location, you look around, and you should see a bunch of these event pins. You click on one and it will say what it is. It says the date and the time, 12/13, 6 p.m. You can click it, you can read all the info about it. You can click navigate to get directions, you can RSVP, you can see how many people are going. If you're interested in finding events that are out of state, you can also do that. If I really wanted to, I could go all the way over to California where it's still warm and they still have events, and there are events everywhere. Chicago's a little dry right now because it's the middle of winter, so yeah, there's that. Awesome thing about Octane, they are always updating the app, improving it. They are also doing a giveaway. They are giving away a set of BC Racing coilovers to a lucky person using the app, so go into the link in the description if you are interested in that. This is a really awesome app. I'm really excited to use it. Thank you, Octane, for sponsoring this video. If you guys need help finding car events around your area, go check them out. So, almost blowing up the Rally Miata. As you guys saw, it's cold here, and it's snowing here. If you remember correctly, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, the Rally Miata had some cooling issues. Turns out it was just a thermostat, but I thought it was a water pump, so I had drained all the coolant, replaced the water pump and all the seals, put it all back together, and filled it with, I thought coolant, but it was really just water. There was no antifreeze in the Rally Miata. If you don't know what antifreeze is, well, just listen to the name, antifreeze. Antifreeze prevents your cooling system from freezing when it's cold outside. Why would having your cooling system freeze be a problem? Well, what happens when you put a Coke can in the freezer? Well, it explodes. Now what happens when you put a car outside in the cold with no antifreeze? It explodes. When water freezes, it gets less dense and expands. If it doesn't have anywhere to expand to, it'll make its own way. So yeah, there was no antifreeze in the Rally Miata, and it's been below freezing for the past 2 weeks. I can defend my stupidity a little bit, but I'll do that at the end of the video. I wanna go ahead and explain what happened first. Yesterday, I hopped into the Rally Miata to go get a drill from the shop to do the wire management underneath the desk. I went outside, started it up, it ran just fine. I started driving, and then I noticed the first issue. The heat was cold. The car was probably about halfway to operating temp, but the heat was still ice cold, like it, was ice. And then I kind of realized we probably have a problem, because the only reason why the heat would be cold while the engine was hot is if the heater core was frozen. However, probably about 10 minutes later, after it had been at operating temp for a while, the heat warmed up. So I didn't really think of it too much. Then the next issue happened. I got to the shop and the temp gauge slowly started crawling past operating temp, started to overheat. That confused me because I'm like, it's 20 degrees outside, why is my car overheating? Did all the coolant leak out or something? I pulled it into the shop, I opened the engine bay, I felt around. The radiator was ice cold, but the engine and the upper radiator hose was pretty warm, and obviously it was overheating. Then I felt the lower radiator hose, and it was crunchy. Kind of like crushed ice from your refrigerator. Sadly, when all this happened, I didn't have my camera on me. I left my camera here while I went to the shop because I was just gonna be at the shop for like 5 minutes. I did record some stuff on my phone, so I'll go ahead and play that now so you guys can watch what happened. So, the top radiator hose is hot, right? The bottom radiator hose, if you come in there, squeeze it, where is it? Oh, there it is. It's crunchy. You know why it's crunchy? It's crunchy because there's ice in it. But there's no coolant leaking anywhere, so it didn't blow a freeze plug or anything else. Might have cracked the block. I guess I didn't think about that. Ah, shit. That might explain why the oil is kind of, or the water's kind of brownish. I'm hoping it just froze, clogged the radiator hose. That's it. Very well might be worse. I'm letting the engine overheat a little bit so it melts all the ice. Such an idiot. Such a lazy idiot. Whoopsies. I don't exactly know what happened, but I looked over here and coolant was just splurging out of this top. I guess the, the lower radiator hose finally cleared up and yeah, I didn't overheat, so I'm assuming it was just starting to flow. So I think it's okay. The coolant looks a little gross, but it doesn't look oily. I think it just looks rusty, which isn't any better. Now that the ice inside of my engine has melted and is no longer ice, and it's actually flowing through the engine and cooling it down, I'm gonna go run to the store, get some coolant, and then obviously change it. So I don't know how it didn't blow up though. I don't know how. Actually, I don't know if it's not blown up. Quite frankly, the block could very easily be cracked, but there's no freeze plug missing, so I mean, that would probably go first because that's what they're designed to do. And now I've got coolant and melting snow all over my shop. The snow doesn't matter, but the coolant. Oh, actually, the coolant isn't coolant, it's water, so it shouldn't be too bad. Still works. Look how pretty the sunset is. Sunset at 4 o'clock. Anyone who lives in like the South, like Florida, you don't have to make this mistake because it never gets below freezing. But here, mission success. I'm gonna go ahead and wait for the car to cool down a little bit and then I'll put the coolant in there. Obviously I got really lucky. This could have been much worse. I could have had to find a new daily, but all we have to do is change coolant. I'm an idiot, but at least you learn from your mistakes. Oh, but hey, speaking of forgetting things, Audrey's sister forgot to change the oil on her car and it got rod knock. I feel bad for her. Sorry, Maxine. But you should have changed your oil. That's kind of what happens when you don't change your oil. If you want a Pontiac G5 with rod knock, email me, I guess. It's parked outside my shop until she can sell it. Getting water all over my shop because this entire car is defrosting. Now let me go ahead and explain my stupidity a little bit. Obviously, it was a really dumb move forgetting that I didn't put antifreeze in the car. But essentially, here's what happened, all right? I changed the water pump, I filled it up with water, and I forgot about it, right? A couple weeks later, when it started to get cold outside, I thought about it. And I was like, oh shit, did I put coolant in the car or did I put normal water in the car? At that point, I was like, come on. I'm not that dumb, right? I must have put coolant in the car because when I did the water pump, I knew I was gonna drive the Rally Miata in the winter, so I would have put coolant in it, right? No, I was just really lazy and I probably didn't feel like going to the store, so I just filled it up with tap water, which is even worse. But I didn't remember that, so I didn't really know. And I was actually too lazy to open the hood and check the radiator. So I just kind of sent it. The first day, it got below freezing outside. I woke up the next morning, I was like, oh, please. Started up, drove it, and everything was fine. So at that point, I assumed there was antifreeze in it because it had reached below freezing and it didn't freeze and everything's fine. The thing was, the car was being parked in a garage. The garage isn't heated, but I'm sure it was still a couple degrees warmer than outside. So I'm not sure if it ever reached below freezing in the garage. Then Audrey and I moved to this apartment where I don't have a garage, and it parked outside. Yet again, it reached below freezing. I think a couple days ago, it was like, you know, high 20s, low 30s outside. So not really cold, but below freezing. Got in the car the next day, everything was fine. After it blizzarded a couple days ago, the temperature dropped quite a bit. Yesterday, it was a high of like 22 degrees, and yesterday was when I realized the problem. Got into the car after, you know, it had been low 20s that day, started up, ran fine, and what you just saw happened. Here's what I'm assuming. I'm assuming that when I did the water pump, I drained all the coolant out, there was still a little bit of coolant in there. So when I filled it back up with water, the water and the coolant mixed, and although it was majority water, there was still a little bit of antifreeze in it. That antifreeze, you know, lowered the freezing temperature of the water a little bit, but not much. So when it was low 30s, high 20s out, the water didn't freeze, but when it got down to like low 20s, the water did freeze. The lucky thing is that my engine seems to be fine. Freeze plug didn't pop out. There's no crack in the radiator, no crack in the block as far as I can tell. And it runs fine, it pulls hard still. Well, it's a Miata, it doesn't pull hard, but it pulls normally. I don't think the water had frozen all the way that night. I think it just froze a little bit. And I was lucky enough to go drive it and realize the problem before last night. Last night, it got down to like 8 degrees or so. I can guarantee if I wouldn't have realized the problem yesterday, that it would have frozen completely last night and RIP engine. It could have been much, much worse. I could have a cracked block right now or a popped out freeze plug, but nope. From now on, I'm definitely gonna not be lazy. I'm just gonna put coolant in every single one of my cars, even if I don't think I'm going to drive it in the winter. The other thing that I was a little confused about, if the water had frozen all the way, right? If the entire water had frozen, when I started the engine, it would have made lots of funny noises, right? Because the water pump would be trying to move ice. And I don't know if it would lock up, or if it would break the ice, or if it would break the water pump. But I had figured it would make some sort of loud noise, which was another reason that when it got cold outside and I started driving the Rally Miata, I figured it had coolant in it because I'm like, hey, there's no weird crazy noises. The water pump seems to be fine, so obviously the water didn't freeze, and obviously I have antifreeze in my coolant. No, I don't honestly really know exactly what happens when the water freezes all the way. All I know is that it would have been bad and it didn't happen, so we avoided the situation very, very narrowly. That's pretty much it. That is the story of how I almost blew up the Rally Miata. It wasn't as crazy as you guys might have expected, but it was just a really dumb move from me, myself, and I. I want to give you guys a little bit of an update. I don't really have anything going on at the shop, no parts for any of the cars. I don't really have anything to do. We are just waiting for the drift truck to get done. Currently, they are planning everything out, figuring out what they actually have to do. Next week is when they start doing. So next week, I will start filming everything and should be done by the end of next week. Until then, I'm gonna be making a little bit of different videos. I wanna talk about superchargers versus turbochargers on Miatas. I wanna just make some different videos that aren't build videos. If you guys have any suggestions for those videos, for instance, the best 5 mods to do to your Miata, leave them down in the description down below. I feel like I'm decently qualified to answer those questions because I've had 2 and my friends have had billions. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you guys enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you didn't enjoy the video, give it a dislike. Please subscribe to the channel. If you are new, go check out the gaming channel. I'm making a video right now about automation in BeamNG. Also, for any of you who said this would smell like shit, you've either never owned a cat or haven't cleaned your cat's litter box often enough. Because here I am, right next to the litter box. I can't smell a single thing. Yeah, it's gonna be so gross smelling your cat shit when you sit in the living room. Yeah. Stick my head in here, right? It smells like honey. It's delicious. All right, that's it. Bye.